peace and security. They decree that they will withdraw the national contingent and national personnel who participate in international peace and security operations up to Ukraine for the purpose of their participation in the protection and sovereignty and territorial integrity of the state. So again, so it does look like they are pulling forces that are abroad, that have been sent out abroad on other military operations, home to Kiev, home to Ukraine, to defend the country from the Russian occupiers. Okay. Now, if we look here, I'm going to take a look at some of the reports that have come out near and around Kiev here. 12 hours ago, a fire was reported in the area of the Lavina Mall near Kiev. Again, this isn't the first mall that we've seen torched just near Irpin, actually. Actually, maybe it was Irpin or Bucha. We saw another mall that had gone up in flames just the other day. So again, as the Russians progress further towards the city here, on all sides, we're going to see more of these civilian targets hit, more of these businesses hit with shelling and other munitions. Again, and we'll probably see an increase in the amount of civilian casualties and collateral damage. 9 hours ago, a residential building was targeted in Zapochia. Again, that's in this cluster of Russian-controlled territory here near the MO6. I'll go ahead and pull up the video for that if I can get it on the screen. Again, it's from Telegram, so take it with a grain of salt. This is again, that video of a residential building that was hit and was on fire. In that town there on the outskirts of Kiev. You can see the fire burning there. All right, we're going to go back here to the map. All right, over here, I believe this is near Mykolaiv, if I'm not mistaken. No, Mark Makariv. Forgive me for that. This was 13 dead, 5 rescued at Makariv Bakery in a Russian airstrike. So as the Russians look to take control of this area, including this airfield here, and set up another checkpoint along the MO6, we're seeing an escalation in airstrikes in that area as they really try to push back those Ukrainian forces and take hold of that area. We're going to start to see that happen down here. In fact, I'm not sure if this red square represents a pocket of Russian-controlled territory at this time on the map. But we do know that they are in this area, again, trying to set up checkpoints, trying to get control over some of these airports here. They need control. The Russians, before they move into Kiev, they need to take control over these key access points to the cities here. They need to take control over these airports and land bridges. For instance, they have control over these airports here. Okay, so if they're bringing in aircraft, if they're bringing in personnel and equipment and supplies to these airports here, they can then easily, right, they can have them safe and sound at that airport, right? Or up here, once they get control over Gostomel, they can have them there, and then they can fly them closer. They can fly personnel, they can fly troops, they can fly equipment to closer airfields once they get those under Russian control. Okay, I don't think they'll probably get control over the main Kiev International Airport until all of Kiev has been taken under control. But it's very possible they could take control over some of these more outlying airfields here. I believe this is Hosaliv, National. Actually, no, hold on. That is Kievchaka. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that again, guys. Apologies for the lack of pronunciation skills on my part. But again, the point being is that some of these more closer lying airfields they will then use to bring forces in from airfields that they've already taken hold of, like here and up here. Again, it's kind of they're hopping from airfield to airfield to bring equipment closer to the outskirts of Kiev, closer to the city center, so that they can prepare for that final push. I believe over here near Boryspil, they're also contesting for not only that airfield, but the MO3 as well at this time. The MO1 also, there's been reported conflict on. They're trying to cut access to Kiev for these supply chains, for the evacuations, etc. Now, with that said, there has been some talk of an agreement between the Ukrainians and the Russians of opening up evacuation corridors. Yoro is looking to possibly get onto one of those. He's looking to get information on that. We're trying to get him some information on that as we speak. However, we don't know exactly what routes those are, so I can't really give you guys confident information on that or when they'll be operational. And from what we've seen already from the Russians over the past week or so is we have seen them break these ceasefire agreements multiple times. We've seen them multiple times fire on civilians as they were trying to move through these evacuation corridors. So it's definitely going to take some time for us to really see where this goes. As for the Russian activities and how they respect these evacuation corridors. So this earlier came in from the New York Post. I thought it was worth a mention. Boom operator actually posted this over on the Discord server. Thank you for this, Boom. This was actually posted earlier today from Zelensky. He says, "I'm not afraid of anyone," and he, in a video, defiantly shared his the
Вечірній Київ.
location
Понеділок,
in this video.
ось
I thought it was worth a share here, guys.
вечірній Київ. Понеділок, вечір. Ви знаєте, ми звикли говорити понеділок день важкий. В країні війна, тож кожен день понеділок. Ми реалісти, тому ми будемо говорити, будемо наполягати на переговорах, поки не знайдемо спосіб сказати нашому народу: ось як ми прийдемо до миру. Саме до миру. Маємо усвідомлювати, що кожен день боротьби, кожен день спротиву створюють для нас кращі умови, сильну позицію, щоб гарантувати наше майбутнє у мирі. Я залишаюсь тут, залишаюсь у Києві, на Банковій, не ховаючись, і нікого не боюсь, стільки, скільки потрібно, щоб перемогти у цій нашій вітчизняній війні.
What an absolute legend, in my opinion. that was definitely a pretty risky move there. I mean, I bet they immediately evacuated him right after they published that video. I bet he was nowhere near that location. However, yeah, I thought that was definitely worth a watch there. That statement coming from President Zelensky earlier today. This was also posted earlier today. Crypto exchange Coinbase has blocked more than 25,000 wallets of the Russian citizens due to sanctions. So they're not just sanctioning things like the SWIFT banking system, things like traditional, forex, things like that. They're not just embargoing Russian banks, and they're not just canceling MasterCard, but they're now attacking things like cryptocurrency in Russia. So again, a furthering of that pressure that's being ramped up and put on Moscow, both financially and geopolitically. So Space Andy over in the Discord, he sent me a clip. I actually can't pull that up in Chrome, how I have this set up here on the side, Andy, but he clipped earlier when the report was first starting. Some people said that there was kind of a power fluctuation and an audio spike that happened on the Kiev cameras. They went back and clipped it, and there was around. Can't really see exactly when that was. I believe it was around 4-ish, 4:20, 4:30-ish Kiev time. There was a power, kind of a power fluctuation that we saw on the lights in Kiev. We saw this happen last night as well a few times. So the power grid in Kiev is starting to show some wear and tear. That is for sure. So I got confirmation from Yoru. So we had originally thought that the running water was out in Kyiv. It turns out it's still flowing. The tap water is still on. However, there's a boil advisory. There's been some possibility that the Russians. There's always a possibility that the Russians could taint the water that they're worried about there. That's a real possibility that they're worried about. There's always the possibility that that line. The boil advisory is really there because of line breaches that occur due to the explosions happening. Okay, the explosions happening. There are cracks that occur in those water pipes, and that can put things like mud and all sorts of bacteria and stuff can grow in the water supply then, and that's why they have that boil advisory in place in Kyiv. Space Andy actually wanted me to clarify. Sounds like shelling. Not sure. So there was shelling that occurred right before, possibly shelling that occurred alongside that power fluctuation. So some people asked that I play this. I believe this is an exclusive ABC,
with the ABC
News interview.
News exclusive, our interview with President Zelensky of Ukraine. His plea for help tonight from the U.S. and NATO, what he says he needs most right now. And it comes amid a worsening scene across much of Ukraine these last 24 hours. Civilians coming under attack while trying to flee to safety. President Zelensky saying Kyiv and other cities are being bombarded. Tonight, those civilians under fire as they flee the violence. And we warn you, these images are difficult. A mortar shell exploding along the escape route from the city of Irpin, that's 16 miles northwest of Kyiv. Stunned people watching, then rushing across the street to help the injured. But not everyone could be saved. 8 people were killed, including at least 3 members of the same family. The U.S. Secretary of State has said the U.S. is investigating credible reports civilians have been targeted by the Russians. If so, he said, they would be war crimes. And then the sound of shelling along that same route, people throwing themselves to the ground, dropping their luggage behind, grabbing their children's hands. This is what they're now facing as they're trying to flee to safety. Soldiers stepping in, lifting children over barriers, helping with their bags and luggage, putting toddlers into strollers, helping families stay together. And so often along the way, it has been President Zelensky signaling to the Ukrainian people he is there. He is not leaving. That Facebook message the morning after the unprovoked invasion began, saying we are here, vowing he will not leave. In my interview with him here tonight, he praises the Ukrainian people's unprecedented courage, saying we will endure. Tonight, President Zelensky, who talked with President Biden again over the weekend, we asked Zelensky what he needs most, what he's asking for from the U.S. And tonight here, his message to Vladimir Putin. And at the very end of our interview, his message in English to the American people. Tonight, our interview, his words with help from a Ukrainian government translator in the room at the office of the president in Kyiv. Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us. We're aware of the situation around Kyiv right now, the fighting to the north, the fighting to the west. What is the situation right now on the ground there, and how long do you think you can keep the capital of Kyiv?
We are being bombarded not only in the city of Kyiv, not only in the housing sectors, but also in the suburbs of Kyiv. You can't even recognize the way our capital looks right now. The city of Kharkiv, Vinnytsia, Odessa, Zhytomyr, Chernihiv, Mariupol. Many cities are being bombed.
I know you're aware of the reality on the ground when you list all of those cities where there is Russian bombardment right now, the Russians closing in. The Pentagon, of course, here in the U.S., believes that about 95% of Russian troops that have been amassed along the Ukrainian border are now inside Ukraine. That would be nearly 150,000 troops. How long can the Ukrainian military, the Ukrainian people hold off the Russians?
I'm sure that Ukrainians are prepared to stand against Russia for their entire lives. Even the cities that were occupied by a Russian military, they have seen the response and feedback from ordinary people. These ordinary people didn't have machine guns. This courage is something that is unprecedented, and Russian soldiers don't even have that courage. The problem is that for one soldier of Ukraine, we have 10 Russian soldiers, and for one Ukrainian tank, we have 50 Russian tanks, but we are destroying them, and this difference is, the gap is closing. But the question is, how long can we withstand? Many things depend not just on us. We will endure, and even if they come into all our cities, there will be insurgency, insurgent war, and no one will give away our independence. Today, war is here. Tomorrow, it will be in Lithuania, then in Poland, then in Germany. This is serious. United States is far away, but in recent days, I do feel that United States are closer to us.
I know you spoke with President Biden again. I'm curious, what's the most important thing you're asking the president for, asking the U.S. for right now?
I told him that for us, the most important today is the security in the sky. We cannot allow Russia to be active there only because they're bombing us, they are shelling us, they are bombing us, they're sending missiles, helicopters, jet fighters. So a lot of things, but we are not doing this because we don't have the sky. We don't control our sky.
The president and NATO have said no to this no-fly zone because of concerns this could trigger a much wider conflict, a much bigger war than what we're seeing already, because there have to be a willingness to shoot Russian planes out of the sky. Do you understand that concern?
What do you mean to shoot down Russian planes? If the missile is flying, yesterday, for example, the missile hit the university in the city of Kharkiv and the dormitory, and the same missile hit the tumor pediatric clinic in Kyiv. So if this missile is flying, so are you thinking whether to shoot it down or not? I think there is no any other answer but to yes, they need to be shot down. You have to preserve lives. I'm sure that the brave American soldiers who would be shooting it down, knowing that it's flying towards the students, I'm sure that they had no doubt in doing so.
Mr. President, I know that no one questions the horror unfolding in Ukraine right now. What the president has said here, and lawmakers really in both parties, Republicans and Democrats, have stood behind the president on this. The concern about protecting and enforcing a no-fly zone over Ukraine would then lead to the possibility it would draw the U.S. into a wider war with Russia, that they're simply not willing to do that.
We are a place in Europe, a place of freedom, a zone of freedom. And everyone thinks that we are far away from America or Canada. No, we are this zone of freedom. And when the limits of rights and freedoms are being violated and stepped on, then you have to protect us, because we will come first, you will come second, because the more this beast will eat, he wants more, more, and more.
Mr. President, you talked about the need for fighter jets. We know the U.S. is reportedly looking at how to supply Russian jets from Poland. You had requested these jets because Ukrainian fighter pilots know how to fly these Russian planes. Has there been any movement on that front?
We asked not only the United States, we asked many other countries. I'm not going to name them. We looked into this question. We know where these Soviet planes are stationed, which countries host them, and we asked these countries. And in many ways, it is the United States, in many ways, who will decide.
Do you believe the president could be doing more to help?
I'm sure that the president can do more. I'm sure he can, and I would like to believe that he's capable of doing that.
The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said just in the last 24 hours that the U.S. is looking at credible reports that civilians have been intentionally targeted there in Ukraine, saying if so, it would be a war crime. We, of course, have seen these horrific images in these last few hours. Do you believe that Putin is deliberately attacking civilians?
Why would I care? The result is the same. People are dying. The bombardment of the schools and kindergartens, the universities, the dormitory, the bombardment of nuclear power plant without even thinking that Europe may disappear if it really hits the unit. Every minute, every hour, every day, the same things are happening. People are dying.
Do you believe Putin is a war criminal?
I think that all people who came to our land, all people who gave those orders, all soldiers who were shooting, they're all war criminals.
Let me ask you, Mr. President, it's believed the U.S. and the West have offered help to get you out of that country alive if it comes to that. Have they made that offer, and how long will you stay?
Yes, I was offered, because there was a loss of information and several special groups who were sent to kill me and my family. I said no, because how can I do this? I'm the citizen of my country, and I'm the elected president of these people.
So you will stay until the end, no matter what that means?
Well, I would like the end to be like in the Hollywood movies, the happy end for our country.
What would you like to say to Vladimir Putin right now?
I think he is capable of stopping the war that he started. And even if he doesn't think that he was the one who started, he should know one important thing that cannot deny, that stopping the war is what he's capable of.
For the American people and for the people of the West who have been moved by your resilience and by the bravery of the Ukrainian people, do you have a message for them?
I don't know what to say. Thank you very much. What to say to Americans. I just want you to feel and to understand what does it mean for us freedom. Because always American people, they speak about freedom and they know what is it. And now when you're looking at Ukrainians, I think you feel what does it mean for us. So we are not far from you. We are not far from you. And that's why, Americans, if you see and if you understand how we feel life, how we fight against all the enemies for our freedom, support us. Support us. And not only with words, with concrete, direct steps. Do it. And I think we'll win. Of course, together with all the world.
And late today, President Zelensky addressing the people of Ukraine, telling them, we're not scared because you're not scared. Zelensky speaking from his presidential office during that message, and that's where he was for our interview earlier today.
Hi, everyone.
All right, guys. So those were the words there in that ABC interview that was done earlier with the president of Ukraine. Again, I thought it was. I don't really like to pull up videos like that from from other news outlets. I like to keep things as original as we possibly can here. However, I think those words were very important and for you guys to hear. And yeah, definitely some pretty stark words there from Zelensky, especially when he switched over and started speaking to the Americans directly in English. I hope that hit home with a lot of people that are watching from here in the States. again, I think the reason why I have followed along with the Ukrainian situation ever since 2014 is because of the connection I feel to Ukraine. It's almost like it's the same type of people, the same type of environment. You know what I mean? Like the same type of terrain in Ukraine. It reminds me of where I grew up here in the Upper Midwest, in the United States. And it's not they're not too far different from where we are here, both as a people and as a country. It's very similar. And yeah, I think people need to realize there's a very large humanitarian crisis unfolding here in Ukraine. It's not just the war. A lot of people that are tuning in, especially just here to my stream, I mean, I'm aware of quite a few people. That are just here to see war. And really, it's not. War isn't the only thing that's happening here. There are people's lives being affected, women, children, elderly, disabled. There's people that are sick, that are having to deal with this. This has far-reaching consequences than just on the people of Ukraine. This is going to affect everybody in Europe. I would imagine that this will in some way affect every single person that is watching this stream now in some way, whether it be in price increases on your gas, whether it be a spillover of conflict into your country, whether it be retaliation from the Russians, eventually causing an escalatory action to be taken from NATO and the U.S. That spirals us into a further conflict here. I think that in some way this is going to have long-lasting consequences, very far-reaching consequences for every single one of us. And listening to that speech, I feel was kind of important. Again, we're going through here and looking at some of the updates that are happening in and around Ukraine at this hour. Go up here and get zoomed out here. So again, keep in mind with this map at the 24-hour mark, we do lose a lot of the alerts that were posted here. I want to start by saying there's been a lot of cellular communications infrastructure that has been downed in Ukraine over the past 24 to 48 hours. All right, we had an outage of communication infrastructure down by the Zaporizhia, which is near that power plant that we covered just the other evening as the Russians took control over that. We're going to get you guys more updates on those power plants here later this evening. So there's been a large effort by the Russians to now start to black out not only the power grid in certain parts of Ukraine, but the communication infrastructure as well. So that means internet infrastructure, cellular communications infrastructure, etc. Radios, TV as well is also now starting to be targeted. As you saw just a few days ago, they striked the TV tower in Kiev there. That's been one of dozens of attacks and acts of sabotage on Ukrainian communication infrastructure. All right, guys. So I have some updates here from Kiev, from the outskirts of Kiev, and from just kind of the evacuation situation that's going on the ground there. Okay, so I'll start. This is kind of a broader update here. This is a note for the 8th of March of 2022. It looks like it's been a long night and early morning. Everywhere has been getting the pissed bombed out of it, and I quote, I'm not going to have frequent updates once daylight comes around in the morning at least. This is from our source on the ground in Ukraine. If you are in central, east, or south Ukraine, expect Russian forces to make another major offensive in these areas again, especially as the weather clears. So this snow that we've been tracking over the past few hours, it does clear up around midnight, or sorry, not midnight, midnight my time. That's about 7 a.m. Kiev time, if I'm not mistaken. It's currently about 11 p.m. here my time. So about an hour from now, this snow will be clearing up and the weather will be getting a little bit warmer. When that happens, we can expect an escalation, an increase and escalation in the conflict and activity that's happening in and around Ukraine, especially here in Kiev. For Odessa in particular, the break in the weather may result in the Russian naval task force regrouping to stage a landing finally. The telling sign is if their fleet in Crimea leaves port again. Of course, we're keeping an eye on those movements of that Russian naval hardware. I recommend that unless necessary, those in anywhere there is fighting do not travel by vehicle or by foot. Trains are the exception if they are still running where you are, but are not foolproof. Ukrainian Railways' own website and Facebook page have the latest info from them on route interruptions and timings. Okay. They state again, you should choose to should you choose to evacuate, exercise extreme caution and follow the instructions of your local authorities, law enforcement, and/or armed forces where possible. Please understand that the municipal authorities may be providing wrong/inaccurate information or instructions as they have been demonstrated the past few days. So in some areas, there's been, again, the fog of war. There's been confusion. There's been inconsistent, information given out to people that are looking to evacuate. So you really have to be vigilant in where you're getting your information from, and make sure you are correlating that information with some source that is higher up the chain. If you're on the ground there in Ukraine, they are not infallible. Verify information and instructions, they say. And another edit that they pushed through said, worth mentioning that Kiev in the Kiev Oblast is going to see a lot more fighting and major action in the next 24 to 48 hours as civilians have fled. Okay, so the more civilians that make it out, the closer that window gets for people that are looking to make it out before the Russians just start to bombard the city and move in on Kiev. Okay. So there's a note here that says that Russian forces have not actually coordinated with Ukrainian forces in an official extent to ensure safety of civilians traveling and/or humanitarian workers. In fact, the Kremlin has openly stated that the military would be enforcing these corridors in force, which is rather counterproductive, and that's exactly why we see over here on the map. It's exactly why we see them setting up not one but two checkpoints on the MO6 now. Okay, it's the same thing they're doing down here right now on these highways right now at this hour. Right, keep in mind this map lags behind. It is not 100% current. Okay, it's usually a day before you start to see somewhere from hours to a day before you start to see this red here actually represent of what's going on the ground. Okay, now with that said, some of these reports can be pretty real time. Okay, some of them can be pretty instantaneous as things happen. As a shell happens, just a few minutes later, we usually see something pop up on the map. Okay, not every explosion, not every conflict, not every incident that takes place is reported on this map. Okay, how this map works is it takes reports that are publicly available on the ground. It then uses certain systems to geolocate and verify those reports, and then it posts them here. So not every map, not every incident is going to be displayed on the map here.
Camille board, it was specifically because the focus was very much, it was a very theater-centric board. And it seemed like the administration side was being neglected. And I can say that even when Chris Eichner, who was our executive artistic director before, and it was very unfortunate. It was a tough decision when we had to let him go, but it was at the point, because of the pandemic, the revenue streams dried up. And based on the employment contract he was under, there was not enough money to be able to pay him, I think, beyond 90 days at that time. And we sat down with Chris and spoke to him, and he was very gracious, very understanding, because he could have said, no, I've got a contract, you're going to pay me no matter what. He was not like that. He was very understanding. And in talking to him, one of the things he specifically said was, when Camille gets to the point where you're reopening and are ready to start hiring staff again, he says, I recommend the first position you hire is office. He says, you need someone with that expertise watching that side of the business, because we've got an abundance of talent on that board when it comes to the theater and the stage and acting. But it was the business side that was getting neglected. And so as far as mine, 22 years with AT&T and as a senior manager, Sombrero Festival, chief executive officer, chairman of the board, and president for several years. I mean, I could rattle off the different boards I've served on, but I've been doing nonprofit work for over 2 decades now.
Okay, Roy, talk about the new road that opened by the Brownsville Port for trucks. Is it open for everyone to travel on?
I believe so, but it's tantamount to, if you're going to drive into the Port of Brownsville, you've got the little booths. You'll have to go through the guards, and they'll check to see what's your business here, because that road is specifically for truck traffic. And again, our ports of entry are very sensitive areas, because they could easily be terror targets. So they absolutely watch who goes in and out of there, and work to ensure that it's for a legitimate purpose. The important thing to note about this road, this is just the very first section of what will eventually be the East Loop. And that will help route traffic, truck traffic, directly from the Port of Brownsville to the bridge at Los Tomates, without having to go down Boca Chica, International Boulevard, 14th Street. So that should alleviate a lot of the traffic problems we have today. And of course, those trucks, because of their weight, do a lot of damage to the roads. The East Loop is being built with the high load truck traffic in mind. So it should be better equipped. It's going to be several years, and it's a partnership. I know the TxDOT is part of it. The county is part of it. The city's committed. I believe we just approved $3 million towards the East Loop project. I know Commissioner Golonsky is a big advocate for it, because it runs through her district. So ultimately, it's going to be a good thing. It's way overdue, but it's good to see this first stretch opening up. And also think about from the perspective of the windmill blades that are coming to the Port of Brownsville. If things are being shipped in and out for SpaceX, now it's a direct shot versus having to come back into town and go out down Boca Chica.
Yes.
We have a lot of those windmill blades coming in, don't we? Because our backyard overlooks 511, and we can see when they're driving in.
Yeah.
I mean, lately I've been seeing quite a few of those trucks coming in. May I ask real quick, when is your term over? How long is your term? Just because he said this is going to go on for the next few years. So I'm wondering like how much involved he's going to be while it's coming through. I'm not being rude. Don't look at me like that.
This is a great question.
Huh?
You started.
This is a
I
great
know
question.
that, but I want to know how much longer is he going to be involved? Because I'm very impressed with Mr. De Los Santos so far. So that's why I'm wondering, because you came in who's the other commissioner that came in?
Pedro Cardenas. We both came in.
That's another one we never hear from, and I would love to have him on the show too, because we don't hear from you guys and we want to. But go on, sorry.
So I was elected, the general election was May 1st, and I was in a runoff. So I was elected June 19th, sworn in June 29th. But it's a 4-year term, so until 2025.
Okay.
And it'll depend on if when I'm up for re-election, whether I'm running unopposed, or if I've got one opponent or multiple opponents. It could be the same thing where there's a general election and my term is over if somebody else beats me right then and there, or that it could go to a runoff and that extends it even further into June. But it's a 4-year term, and I'll go into this topic because it's a perfect segue. Or I can run for the second term, and I'm limited to 2 terms as a commissioner right now.
Is there term limits?
There are term limits now. Those were just approved by the voters May 1st of 2021. And this is something where I'm not doing any work yet to try and overturn that, which that would be against the will of the voters, because the voters overwhelmingly approve this. but I believe firmly term limits are bad at the local level. I think the citizens should get to make the choice for several reasons. I think when it comes to our politicians in Washington and our politicians in Austin, if we don't see them here in the district they represent on a day-to-day basis, that's where we have problems, because they're up there getting wined and dined by lobbyists, special interests, cutting deals with colleagues, as opposed to facing their constituents every day, seeing the problems firsthand, and answering to their constituents every day. So I think term limits is something that should absolutely be considered at the state and federal level. Locally, we're here. We see our constituents every day, and we've seen it before where, like with Commissioner Tetra, who won first as a write-in candidate. And in her last race, when she ran for re-election, she was facing a former mayor and a former school board president and defeated them both without a runoff. If that doesn't tell you this is what the people want, what does? So the other side of the coin with this is that I've had to fight corruption in different areas and with different organizations. And when it's years old, when it's deep rooted and embedded, that's not something you can fix overnight. And I can tell you, there are times where it's taken me years, up to 6 years, to really start to make a difference. But the biggest part of being able to have made that difference where I did was the fact that those people realized this guy's not going away. And it was not going to change. We were absolutely going to see this through. That's not the case in Brownsville. If there are people out there who are corrupt that don't want someone like me coming in and shaking things up, they can tell themselves, he's only got a couple of years left. We just have to wait him out. And then we're back in control again. That's the problem with term limits, in my opinion, is we get too few stellar public servants. And with term limits now, when you find one, you're very limited on what they can and can't do. So
And I've always been for term limits, but from an educator standpoint, I can absolutely see what you're saying, because there are times when teachers were like, well, just wait this principal out and they'll move them around and things will change.
And
so
we see it in
I also see
Washington.
that point of view.
We see Congress is like, just wait 2 years and we'll take control of the House or the Senate, or the president's got 2 years left. Just vote no on everything he wants. And when the new president comes in, we'll do it our way. Now, that's not how the country was founded. That's not how we became the greatest nation in the world. We did it by compromise and working together and coming together as a country when things were tough in the world. And now it's just each side fighting one another and who can one up one another the most. And I know just recently with the Supreme Court nominations, and I heard people saying, well, no, because when the right had the option, they put somebody on there who's as far right as they could get. So now we should put somebody on there who's as far left as we can get. No, that's wrong. Two wrongs do not make a right. We need somebody who's going to represent the country well. And to me, that's somebody who's usually in the middle, who can see both sides and just look at what's fair, not for my party, but for our country.
What's constitutional? That's all you could ask. And
exactly,
that was one of my concerns. Look, I kind of like the new the nominee for Supreme Court, Miss Brown.
I do. I like her.
I like her qualifications, but that's what I want. I don't. But
I was a fan of Childs also.
Where Biden screwed up was in regards to, well, it's got to be a black woman. We're like, hold on, give me the most qualified. I don't care. Brown.
What bothers me is the possibility of another Supreme Court justice being confirmed with just 50 or 51 votes.
Yeah,
I think we had some of our greatest courts when it was 60 votes or more. And that's how they got confirmed, because they were recognized for their record. And to this day, that's one of my biggest points of contention with Congress previously and with Donald Trump, even though he was just the candidate at the time. But Merrick Garland, when Merrick Garland was nominated by Barack Obama, there should have been a vote. Republicans had the majority, so they could have voted no if he was not qualified. But to say you don't even get to vote, to say my representatives, my senators don't even get to vote, that's not democracy, in my opinion.
I agree. I was completely against that. I want to vote up or down, but just just go through the process, man.
Absolutely.
Let's go. Was Daniel a salaried employee of the Children's Museum?
He did that one.
No, he did that one. Yes, we already answered that. Also need a Barnes and Noble here. Yes, and congratulations to Buho.
Yes.
I love Gilbert.
And I know someone said P.F. Chang's. I know P.F. Chang's has been looking at Brownsville. I don't know how close they are to possibly doing something here, but location is key.
I love Pia Chang's. I love their appetizer, that lettuce wrap. It's amazing.
Anything else different? Yes.
Why would the city CMB lie about Daniel's position within the museum? I don't know that they have. Was Daniel only a front desk clerk? Will he dress in costumes and play with children? Was he the pavilion manager? I shared this conversation with Mr. Santos. I don't give a rat's behind if he's dressed in a dress. I don't care if he's dressed it with a wig. It really irks my chain for individuals to want to make that an issue.
Oh, but I don't even read this as an issue. I thought they meant like, did he dress up in costume so that people didn't know who he was? So you know what I mean? Like, did he dress up as
and I think I agree with you, Maggie, on the interpretation of that. One, I don't think the museum lied. I have not heard them say this was his position and something was proven differently. I know there was a news story where the banner across the screen gave him a title, but my understanding was that he was a staffer. I don't know that there's a more formal title than that that he ever had. I've never heard that, not from anyone at the museum, to say he was a manager or was management or anything like that.
I think that was a Channel 4 News that added.
I think so.
Yeah. Why hasn't AT&T finished extending their fiber optic cables into subdivisions?
That's above my pay grade. I wish I could tell you. I'm on the retail store and cell phone side of the business.
I'm going like, I don't even understand that question. I got my undergraduate degree in 4 years. I'm surprised you didn't get it in 2 years. Well, this guy's the smartest guy.
Good for you, David. I still tell people that my biggest regret is not finishing my undergrad degree in my 20s and not getting my law degree in my 20s.
Bottom line isn't with education is you never are told to go back.
Amen.
So good evening. Good evening. This is how far behind we are in the comments.
Wow.
That's okay.
Now, good evening, everyone. To Mr. Santos, what can the city do to maintain the grass cut in the expressways? Why can't we be proactive and do like McAllen, hire a company, and then get reimbursed by TxDOT?
That's not actually how it happens. This is something we've absolutely looked at, and I think I've even written a memo to the city manager on it. I know I've had the discussion, but the Midi Cultural District was asking about this for years, is why can't our grass be cut like other cities up the valley? Those cities pay for it. They're not reimbursed by TxDOT. They pay TxDOT for extra mowing cycles.
I will disagree with you. And I'll tell you why. Because I actually had this conversation with a director of TxDOT in one of the Brownsville days up at the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe something that you can look into, because the Brownsville, the director of TxDOT at that time, he made mention publicly in front of a lot of the folks there at Leadership Brownsville that the reason that McAllen's and other cities' grass gets cut is because they do have a contract with the city where they cut their own grass and then TxDOT reimburse them. So it might be something to look at, because a lot of time, and I made sure that I posted it back then. And this is like, again, maybe 4 years ago. Like, I honestly can't even remember. I don't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning.
The only scenario I could imagine would be if TxDOT is agreeing to allow the city to bring in their own contractor. And if TxDOT would have mowed 4 times a year, then they may reimburse them for 4 cuts. But if that city is wanting the grass cut 8 times a year, 12 times a year, I don't think TxDOT is paying them for as much as they want.
Oh,
TxDOT is paying for whatever TxDOT would normally do, but the city is footing the bill for the rest. So this becomes a budget issue. Is Brownsville willing to pay the thousands of dollars for extra mowing cycles?
But I think one of the things is, at least let's get that. I think part of the concern was, you drive into McAllen and it's like day and night sometimes at a time. And our question directly was to them. And again, Leadership Brownsville was there with us at that same little workshop that they had. And we, everyone was just like waiting for the answer. And the answer was that, they do get, and you might be 100% right in regards to, hey, we're going to go out there, cut it 4 times a year. It's going to cost us give it a number, $1,000 each time. Here's $4,000. Y'all take care of it the rest of the year.
Right.
That's great. Maybe we could get that. So
that's something I'll look into. And I will say that on the idea of additional mowing cycles, I have spoken to officials at the county, and the county is willing to consider partnering with the city so that the city doesn't have to foot the entire bill, because of course the county benefits as well. So